Now, taking you back to ActionSA, reacting to a request to the National Treasury to take measures against businesses and individuals implicated in state capture. Michelle, you were still trying to explain some of your concerns when it comes to the tender processes, because you've expressed a lot of concern around state capture implicated companies vying for government tenders. I know there's been outrage at the possibility that the provincial government could be in a position of doing business with alleged profiteers of crime. Talk to us about those concerns.
Well, thanks so much. I'm sorry we got cut off. I don't know how much of what I said you did get, but the big problem here is that Roy Moodley founded Royal Security and was named in evidence presented in testimony at the Zondo Commission as one of the two principal capturers in Prague's procurement process. And despite that, the Western Cape provincial government awarded a 282 million rand tender to Royal Security to provide security for properties owned by them. So it seems here that there are two problems. The first is that there seems to be a problem with the Western Cape Department of Infrastructure's supply chain process itself. Still Security has launched a court challenge to interdict the department from appointing Royal Security, and in the allegations that they've raised, it seems clear that there were problems the appointment of Royal Security. So that's the one aspect of it, is the department's own supply chain process. But aside from that, if Royal Security had been blacklisted after this evidence was given, if a prosecution had taken place, they wouldn't be in a position to do business with government at all. And that is really what we should be seeing, is that companies and people who've been implicated in state capture should be prosecuted and prevented from doing business with the state.
And what tools do you think the provincial government can use to exclude bidders from tender processes?
There's two possible ways that you can blacklist, and the one is under the Preferential Procurement Policy Framework regulations. So what could happen is that if a tenderer makes any misrepresentation in the bidding process, the accounting officer must report that misrepresentation to National Treasury, and National Treasury can then decide to restrict that tenderer from doing business with any organized state for a period up to 10 years. So what we would like to see from the Western Cape provincial government is that they have a look carefully at whether there was a misrepresentation made in the tender process. We suspect that there was. And if there was, that they report that to National Treasury, and the National Treasury then takes steps to make sure that Royal Security and the people involved in Royal Security don't do business with the state again.
In fact, all of this comes as Chief Justice Raymond Zondo has warned that if there was another attempt at state capture, Parliament would fail to prevent it. And he has also made suggestions around a permanent anti-state capture committee in Parliament. In assessing the implications of state capture, do you think such a committee would be effective enough in at least ensuring continuous accountability?
I think it's very important to have that kind of committee, because it could also look at current legislation and see where the gaps and loopholes are, and then take steps to fill those gaps so that people who have been involved in state capture can't get around the law that it, as it currently is. But I think what's most important out of the Zondo Commission is that people are prosecuted, that legal entities and people are prosecuted, because, as I said, there's two types of blacklisting. The second type of blacklisting is very effective, and it's done under the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act. And what would happen then is that a court could convict a person of an offence to do with tender irregularities, and would impose a sentence and issue an order that convicted person or enterprise be endorsed on the register, and once they're on the register, they can't do business with the state anymore. So because we're not seeing prosecutions, we're not seeing these people being blacklisted, and therefore the situation just carries on. So I think it's a mix of people, but at the end of the day, what we really need to see is prosecution.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that Western Cape Premier Alan Winde has also said that prior attempts to terminate contracts with such individuals were dismissed by the High Court, for instance, thus pointing out the limitations of Treasury regulations. What needs to happen in that regard?
There are certainly limitations, and one of those things is that the people who are involved in state capture and in fraud they morph. You know, you can blacklist a company, for example, but they can just form another company. You can blacklist a person, but then in this case, for instance, in this case of Royal Security, Roy Moodley would resign and his son would take over as the entity's sole member. So one would have to look carefully at the loopholes that exist and then put legislation and regulations in place. For instance, why can't National Treasury amend so that the law doesn't only make provisions for once a person is convicted, but for instance, if there's evidence that comes out of a commission that shows that they have been involved in state capture, why can't they be blacklisted as well? So there certainly are steps that can be taken to prevent these people from continuing with what they've been doing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. Let's perhaps leave it there for now. ActionSA Western Cape Chairperson Michelle Wasserman.